You're listening to the This is Friendship podcast. We are your hosts, Joy, Carly, and Andy. Welcome back to the show. We are so excited to have you here today, tonight, or maybe it's morning, or however you're catching us. We are so glad you're here. If you are new to This is Friendship, we'd like to welcome you. If you've been following along and haven't yet found time to leave us a review, we'd be honored and grateful if you would leave us a review. We take your feedback to heart and would also love to hear more about what you'd like to hear on our podcast. On to today's episode. Last week, we explored the topic of ambition and how sometimes things can get in the way of pursuing and achieving our goals. We believe there's a big difference between striving and perfection, and thought we'd explore what perfect means to us and how it manifests in our lives, how to wrangle it at times, and how to use it to enhance creativity and pursue our goals or to pursue goals. So here we go. Our first question we're going to explore. Carly, I'm going to kick it over to you. How does perfection manifest for you in your life?
That's a good question. As I get older, I'm less rigid about having everything be perfect, for sure. But I am type A, like to have control of things, like things to go my way. And it's in my nature, just how I'm wired, to want everything to be perfect. But
Mhm.
it's perfect to me, which isn't necessarily perfect to the person sitting next to me or the three human beings that I birthed. Vision of perfection. And I grew up in gymnastics as an athlete, very goal oriented environment, and always goal setting and writing goals. Our coach was very big on that. So to me, perfection was meeting the goal in a way too. And it was a little bit about how you got there as well. Obviously, in that sport, it's about getting that perfect 10, right? Although it's higher than 10 now. But yeah, I think it's a concept and something I've always had in my life, just from being an athlete when I was young and into my adult years. But able to let that go a little bit the older I get.
Carly, in our last episode, you mentioned something, and when I think of perfectionism, I think of maybe the things that we say. And I think oftentimes some tapes can be, who do you think you are? And then also never being good enough either. And I felt that really resonated for me when you had mentioned that voice in the back of your head as you're starting new things. And I think it can manifest with those questions.
Yeah, it can be a negative. There definitely can be a negative connotation and a negative block, if you will, because you want to strive for that perfectionism and it holds you back from taking steps forward with a little bit of fear in there in the mix. And it also can be when you look at others and you think you see perfection, but that's not authentic. It's not, that is not their real story. No one is perfect. Not a single person. And so that can definitely stand in your way, whether it's letting it stand in your way, it's blocking you from moving forward, or letting it stand in your way because you think you aren't as good as that other person who seems to be perfect, or you can't do it as well as they can. But you don't always know the story behind what they're doing, and maybe they're doing it, maybe they have been doing it for 20 years, so they should be better at it than you if you just started.
Yes, I was once told never compare your beginning to someone's middle because
Yeah.
you don't know how much time or energy or effort or practice or anything that anyone has put into it. And I think everybody knows that there's no such thing as perfection, right?
Well, a lot of us try to chase it anyway.
Absolutely.
And we forget that in the middle of it all, right?
Joy, how about you?
Oh my goodness. I think there's just sometimes a need for perfection that's within you. And I think a lot of the need to be perfect, I think comes from inside us more so than anyone else is looking at you because really nobody else is looking at you saying, "Oh my gosh, she seems to have it all put together. She seems to like really get this." No, nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that. You are your own worst critic. And I think it probably stems from us as growing up as little grade school individuals. There's a lot of pressure to learn how to read, to write, to be able to be good at math and science, and especially with us growing up getting grades and our first that's our first bit of self-reflection and where are we on a scale. I think we're taught and brought up that we are always going to be somewhere on a scale. We're always going to be learning or growing. And I think that's partially life, that's partially learning and growing, but it's also a learned kind of behavior that we're born with to a certain degree. Everybody's got some sort of level inside us, but the way our lifestyle is, the way we're raised, the way we're nurtured, I think it's developing. I remember middle school for me, getting to middle school was the biggest probably eye opener. And growing up, we didn't we I come from a large family. I'm the middle of 5 kids, and we didn't come from a ton of money. And when I saw people were going to school and having all these different shoes to go with all these different outfits, and I was like, I've got my athletic pair of shoes that I wear with everything, my one pair of shoes, and just being a little placeholder. And that for me was a little bit of starting to reflect of I'm not perfect, or that's where I started to idolize a little bit and say, oh, there is a little bit of perfection, or that's when I'm looking at people, but I think everybody does in middle school, right? It's the worst time of everybody's life. If we could cut those years out and just skip right past, I think everybody it have much better life. And I think, anyways, that the goal of perfection is definitely an evolution. And I think it is a learned behavior. I think now as I'm older and wiser, I know that, and I truly believe that I am perfectly made by my creator. I really feel that I am perfect the way he made me. He designed me the way I am, and with all my flaws, with all of my gifts, with all of my struggles, with all my weaknesses, everything. I believe I'm perfectly made, and I know that there is only one. I really believe that there is one, only one perfect person that walked this earth, and that's not me. That's not me, and I don't have to in knowing that and truly understanding and comprehending that, it makes me be able to take a breath and just go on and worry about my own self and focus on my own self and not worry about what anybody else in this world is doing really because I'm not the judge of anybody else and I'm not even the judge of myself. I guess I really feel like my view of perfection has definitely changed from when I was a grade schooler to middle school and then entering in the world after college even. That's when I really started to get a better understanding through high school, a little bit about my creator and where I am, where I'm going, and just that view of perfection is it's not what I thought or what I had learned as a behavior.
And probably a little bit as a mom too. I'm putting myself in a
Mhm.
future role, but and the role of a lot of our listeners as well. I'm sure that there is a lot of pressure as it relates to that.
Definitely. And mother has always told me, "You are perfect just the way God made you." And you want to say, "Oh, that's so awesome. That's the best thing I've ever heard." But not really completely taking it all in and absorbing that and really understanding, comprehending to a certain level I do today and I do now. Yeah, I think that's the one thing that I want to be sure as a mom to pass on to my my children is that they are perfectly made. That there is no one, nothing in this world that can ever change that, that they are perfectly made just the way they are. And if I can do that, then I feel like I've done my job.
Thank you for sharing. I think for me, I would say, so I said at the beginning, how do you wrangle it? So how does perfection manifest, right? How do you wrangle it? I've tried to make a promise to myself that I'll use it for good, because you can not pursue things, or it can get in your way personally. It can get in your way if there's your spouse or what have you. So you have to wrangle it in a little bit in terms
Mhm.
of expectations. I think how it manifests for me is I never want to be out over my skis. I don't ever want to be in a position where I feel like I don't have enough information. And I think deeper than that is I'm quite frankly just afraid of making mistakes. I want to avoid mistakes as much as I possibly can. What I do is I step back and I'm like, what about this? And what about this? And instead of being able to make a quick decision, sometimes I have to step back and just continue to think through things. So when you have a husband who is action oriented and is just ready to make decisions really quickly, and then you have a wife or someone who is a little more deliberate, sometimes we have to find that happy medium and that happy balance. So I have to wrangle it, but at the same time it's served me so well as well. I mean, it truly has driven and it has motivated me to have higher expectations and to achieve more, and really has probably moved me toward excellence, just more as an internal motivator than an external motivator. But I've definitely had to keep it in check for sure in terms of the manifestation. And then I would just come back to I think a big thing for me is when I start things, but who do you think you are that you're going to be good at this, or you're an expert on this, or what have you? And so I think that's how perfection manifests for me.
I heard something really
Mhm.
good about that might help. That if you don't have to be an expert to teach someone or to show someone something. You just have to be 10%. You have to just not 10% better. You have to be 10% further on your journey than they are.
I love that.
That's that's good.
They will learn from you and see you as an expert, see you as someone who knows what they're talking about in that particular area. Just 10% more than 10% further along than they are.
I think, Carly, that's why I love and have loved my MOPS group, Mothers of Preschoolers group, especially being stay-at-home mom, because every season of life is different, and perfectionism in early kid years, it just doesn't exist. If you could see my living room covered in toys right now, that would not be perfection. So I think it's definitely been a curve, and I am definitely reaching out to everybody that's got 10% or more. And I have been of, hey, how do I do this without losing my mind? Because I have this idea. I want my house to be clean and dishes to not be in the sink and perfectly in the dishwasher or in the cupboard. And that just that idea of perfection for me looks different right now. And I think that's really important for each of us and our listeners to reflect on as well too, because perfection, the idea of it looks different in every season of life. And I think when you're realistic with yourself, you give yourself grace. Lean on those extra 10% people that have a little bit extra more knowledge than you do.
I like that. Lean on grace. That was beautifully said. So I think sometimes we have mentioned that perfectionism is maybe a little way of hiding. And I think behind that then is finding courage or finding being brave to pursue things, even though we've got a lot of those things that are maybe holding us back. So, next question, Joy, let's start with you. How are you being brave with your life right now?
I think just showing up every day is being brave. I think, especially after this year, life is difficult. Life has been difficult. Life is not going to be easy and things aren't just going to change and turn around. I feel like being brave with just showing up every day and doing the best that I can. And even if that I me when I say that, even if your best for the day is 75%, showing up at your 75% every day until you can be back at your 100, I think is brave to me right now. I think, again, that's how I'm being brave in my life right now. Sometimes I think when I found out I was pregnant again, I had to be brave and not fill my head with worries and doubts and, "Oh gosh, when is the bottom gonna fall out again? When can I breathe and have that comfort level that I had in my first pregnancy that was wonderful? It was easy. It was so much fun." And I think this one has been a little challenging, just not having that, not really feeling like I've ever reached that comfort level of, okay, yes, everything is perfect, everything is going great. I don't have any concerns or worries. And when my doctor asks me, "Do you have any questions?" I say, "No, I don't have any right now." Instead of the list of all of my worries and concerns that are going through my head. I think I'm being brave with my life right now, just showing up every day and doing the best I can with whatever that is at any given day, especially after this last year.
That's good.
Beautiful answers. I love those.
Yeah.
Carly, how about you? How are you being brave?
I mentioned it in the last episode, but I feel facing the fears and figuring out a way to climb over them, break through, skirt around them a little bit at a time, punch through it 100 times if you need to. I feel that's how I'm being brave. There's a lot of struggle, and it's a whole heck of a lot easier to just get back into bed and pull the sheets over your head some days than it is to I just gotta do one thing. And why am I so scared about that? I think a mindset shift too of uh, naming the feeling is brave, and being able to call it what it is. It's fear. You're scared. You're going somewhere you've never been before, and it's scary. And so you're making up all these other little to dos on my list that you need to get done because it keeps you busy. And then you haven't done anything that has really moved you forward because you're scared.
Yeah.
That's so I think figuring that out and being able to, I definitely am not successful. It still stops me a lot of the time, but at least I'm a lot more aware of it now and able to really figure out how to get around it. It sometimes takes a little bit, but I'd say that's how I have been brave just really since starting my business, and taking me some time to figure it out. But here I am. So hopefully you guys can learn from that, and so can some of our listeners, that everybody's scared, and if you can call it what it is and recognize that there isn't really a monster under your bed. It's like the black t-shirt that you took off last night. You build all this stuff up in your head, and the reality of it probably isn't that scary if you really just
Mm,
name it and break it down and really take a good look at it, and try to fight it one little baby step at a time.
yeah.
Absolutely. I think both Joy and I have enjoyed seeing the progression of 823 Group Arizona and what you're doing from a social media standpoint and the videos that you've been consistently putting out. And I think oftentimes that's a big fear for people when they're developing their brand and they're starting to put content out there, and the consistency, the depth of the content that you're putting out, the inspiration, the positivity, it's evergreen content, right? You're forever going to be able to look back on it, but anybody who's starting to follow you is also going to be able to look back, and it becomes a whole story of you and what your mission is, and all of that. And I admire that you, like I said in the last episode, I would never guess that you have any fear. But now that you're expressing that and you're sharing that to understand how that manifests for myself or for all of us when we're approaching those goals, you're definitely providing leadership and just inspiring all of us. So,
Thanks.
yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
That means a lot. Thank you.
definitely
Well,
an inspiration.
and I don't love the phrase "fake it till you make it," but if you do, you can. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I really don't. But I'm really
Yes, you
impressed.
do.
I really am impressed that you think I do. No, but it's a learning. It's learning. Are you willing to learn? If you're willing to learn, which also could be scary.
I think being brave in my life right now is manifesting more in relation to ideas into implementation. And Joy, you had mentioned your word for the year in our last episode. And my word for this year is action. And so at the beginning of this year, I promised myself that I would really act on the ideas that I'm always generating and the innovation that I'm thinking of, or wouldn't it be cool if, and really taking action on that. So that's been a promise that I've made to myself this year. And that truly, I think, how being brave is manifesting for me this year.
I love that. I think our podcast is a good example of both being brave and taking action because it was an idea and it was just a casual over wine conversation. And look, we actually we made it happen.
Now we
Here we
can
are.
And
virtually
all
cheers all the time.
yeah, and all the stuff we're figuring out and the people that we're connecting with and new friends we're finding along the way. And I just can't wait to see where we're at the end of this year and where 2022 is going to take us. It's pretty cool.
Can I tell you, Andy, that or ask you the question? Are you sure that hasn't been your year or that word? Are you sure that hasn't been your word of the year every year? I feel like every year you come up with some brand new action or change and you totally evolve and show up. And I'm like, wow, I am so excited for everything she's doing, everything that's going on. And I just love seeing you grow.
Thank you.
Are you sure that
Thank you.
isn't your word every year?
I'm sure. I'm sure. You have no idea how there's just so many things that I would love to do. And I think this podcast and these episodes are a reflection of we don't have to choose something over another. We can do everything. But I think I've hesitated or I've maybe held back. And so I haven't taken those baby steps or those actions that have been needed to work toward those larger goals. So it means a lot to me that you're saying that, though, Joy, because I think oftentimes I'm so achievement oriented that I achieve something and then I'm just on to the next thing. And I don't really take the time to revel in or enjoy or really truly understand maybe how far I've gone. And maybe there's people that can relate to
Yeah.
that. And maybe a lot of that is just in relation to the last year. I think we all stepped back and we evaluated what was most important to us. And I think that played into it a lot. So thank you for saying that, Joy.
And Andy, what you just said, it's like when I go on a hike and you're at the bottom and you got to get to the top. And you're like, that is so far away and so high. How I can't even see the trail. How am I going to get there? And then if you don't stop and turn around every so often, you never see how far you've come. So you got to turn around and look and enjoy the view a little bit because you're like, oh my gosh, I started over there. I've already come all the way up here. And then you turn around and look to where you're going, and it still seems further away, but it's getting closer. And then you can turn around again a little bit further down up the trail. I love that you said that because you have to stop and turn around and look at how far you've come. You have to. Think about where you were 3 years ago. You were in a totally different place. All of us really were. And that's part of life, guys. All of our listeners, please turn around and look at where you are and how far you've come, because you will be amazed. And pat yourself on the back, give somebody next to you a big hug, celebrate however you celebrate, do a little dance. It's cool to see how far you have come, even though it looks like you have so much further to go.
Thank you, Carly. You just put words to feelings. I mean, that's the most beautiful articulation of the take a moment, take a deep breath, turn around, take a look, take it all in. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that. Thank you.
So important to do,
Yes.
and very well said.
Thanks.
Our goal is to create connection and community and to leave our followers feeling inspired. We hope you found today's episode relatable and hope you are pursuing the goals that stretch you and, quite frankly, scare you. We hope you find bravery in pursuing your goals. We can't wait to join you again in our next episode. Thanks, ladies.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.